available is this person, and is he one of us? Can I trust him? Can I believe him? And that credibility and that trust is built by being out there and being available to the community.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
Well, first and foremost, he has to be a good manager. He has to be able to handle the budget issues. He has to have good communication skills. Those skills have to be both to the board, letting us know what he or she is hearing, and down towards the teachers and administrative staff, and even students within the school system. It can't be a one-way communication. It has to develop very good relationships with the teachers, so the teachers can tell the superintendent what kind of issues they're facing in the class, and give them the opportunity to provide the tools to keep our students successful. Has to be willing to look for creative solutions, and I think I look for somebody with a stronger commitment to the arts, such as drama and music, as they have to academics and sports, because that is a critical part of the Owatonna school system as well.
Thank you. Mr. Van Nerden, we are going to start to turn to some audience-generated questions now. And you can see Brad can continue to bring me questions, which is good. If you have a question, you need to write it down on a piece of paper and signal to Brad, and he will be glad to pick that up. We're going to actually combine a couple of questions here. Mr. Van Nerden will bring it first one to you to begin with. The question: the Owatonna School District suffered defeats at the ballot box in 2007, 2008, 2010, and 2011. Why? And why did the latest bond vote fail in the rural parts of the district? And how can that be addressed in the future? Mr. Van Nerden.
Well, I think first it becomes a part of the credibility issue again. As I talk with people in the rural community, they don't seem to like what's going on within the school system. They don't seem to understand what's going on. I think a communication link is really important. You have to understand that rural people are people who want practical answers. They want you to have common sense as to what kinds of issues and solutions you might have to the problem. So common sense, paying attention to and communicating with them what you're attempting to accomplish in the school system, I think, are really important for rural people. And I don't have a good answer other than that.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, we've had several failures at the ballot box. Primarily, we've had quite a few different issues that came up that were fairly complicated. We had a question 1, a question 2, a question 3, and it was very confusing whether if you answered question 1 yes and question 2 no, what did that mean? If you answered yes to all 3 of them, that was clear, but if you answered yes and no's to various ones, it wasn't clear. So we have to be very clear with our message, very clear with what our need is, and very clear on why we need that, what we're going to do with those funds. And if we did that, moving forward, it'll be much easier to get one of these levy to pass. As far as why the rural vote, I think they look at it very similar to everybody else. I mean, we need to make sure that the funds are going to be used well, and I don't know that we necessarily got that message across very well.
Thank you. Mr. Sebring.
I do think that the economy has played a pretty significant role in these past failures, and it would be difficult to not lift that up and say across the board it's pretty difficult to think about increasing a tax base when your neighbor, or maybe even a couple of your neighbors, don't have a job. That, to me, overridingly has been the #1 issue. And I think, and I'm going to echo what David just said, I think that the clarity of the issues has been a little bit muddy. And perhaps we need a couple of wins. I'm not talking about the kind of win where you have to come from 41-7 at halftime to win the game, but I think we need some understandable, smaller steps to see a series of successes with our bonds and levies.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
Well, I think that the economy does have a part in it. We all are challenged economically. People complain about taxes all the time. You hate to see them go up. I think that probably has a part of it. I think that a great deal of it was doing too much on the ballots. I don't think it was a lack of communication so much as trying to pair things together that maybe weren't good fits. You know, in the last levy, I talked to a lot of people who said they would have voted for the Willow Creek expansion, but it was paired with another option they did not like, and so they had no choice but to vote no. I think that if we keep our bond referendums to a very specific purpose and keep it very simple, such as the operating levy, and not combine with other things, we have a greater chance of success. I think the people of Owatonna are willing to commit to their children into the school system. We just have to give it a clean option.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Wall.
And I'll just build upon some of the answers that were already given. At the end of the day, there are a lot of variables that I heard to explain the election results, but the first thing to remember is that most of the elections were very close. So that there is a lot of support and a natural tendency in our community, from my perspective, to support the school system and to make Owatonna a school of choice. But at the end of the day, I think we go back to the trust issue and the credibility. At the end of the day, I heard too many people say they just didn't trust the information that they were being provided. I think the answer to that is to move forward with visibility, transparency, and to have the stakeholders in the community be actively involved. The key there is active involvement. We've had task force historically that have worked with the school district on these issues, but what has not happened is they've not had free rein to investigate and explore and get all the evidence and the documentation that the board has had, that the administration has. They have to have free rein.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Anderson, we'll go with the next question with you. And this is really a combination of two questions that we have coming from our audience. Class size is becoming an issue in our district. How will you look into and address the school crowding situation, particularly knowing what the budget restrictions will be? Mr. Anderson.
Okay, I think class size, we have a couple issues there. There's some issues within the elementary schools. If you look at our enrollment and what our targets are for all the way kindergarten, all the way through third grade, we exceed our target numbers in every single school and every single class, with the exception of one school, I believe in second grade, is the only one that we're below our target. So really the only way to address that is by trying to figure out how we can possibly find another teacher. We do have some issues where, say, third grade, there's almost 400 students in third grade, whereas second grade there's only about 350 or 330 kids in third grade or in second grade. So there's a couple areas where we have a large number of kids going through in one particular grade. And then we have issues in the high school where we might have a class that might have 40 students, and we're going to have to, from a scheduling standpoint, I think, address that. Very different solutions to those different problems, but we need to kind of look at both of them and try to get a total solution.
Thank you. Mr. Seabury.
Folks, I think, and I touched on this earlier, that anything that stands in the way of time that a teacher has with a student, for me, that is priority number one. And by that I mean it's priority number one, and it's way, 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 way up here, and everything else is a very, very distant second. And there are probably a number of equations that, as an outsider looking in, I'm not privy to at this point, and I'm completely unaware of. But I would say that those things would have to be secondary items to student-teacher time.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
Well, when we're talking about class sizes, I think that's a function of the overall size of the class, whether it be a sophomore, junior, senior year class. If we have a finite number of teachers and we have 400 kids versus the last year we had 350 kids, then you're going to have larger class sizes. I think the first thing we need to do is understand what the problem is, and if it is a short-term issue or is it a long-term issue. I think you need to do a little bit of a demographic analysis to find out what is the Owatonna school system doing? Is it growing? And why is it growing? Where is that growth coming from? I understand, like, for instance, we have a couple of large class sizes in the kindergarten and in the third grade. Is that going to continue through the junior high or the elementary schools and into the high school, or is it a one-time situation? We can't develop a solution for something that's not going to continue, because then we'll have wasted class space. So we need to understand how big and how long the problem is going to be there, and decide if we need a short-term solution or a long-term solution.
Thank you. Mr. Wall.
It's a great question, and I think it's an opportunity to also talk about board function first and foremost. A lot of the solutions have to come from the administrative level. We can set the objective of addressing class size, and that is a board function, but at the end of the day, it's the administration, the teachers, they have to develop the best path to get to that end. So philosophically, I think that's the approach we have to take, is let's let the experts figure out the best solutions. Second, I think that at the end of the day, we may not have a way to address in this economic crisis class size issues. So we have to continue to recruit and hire the best of the best in terms of our teachers. We are very, very fortunate to have exceptional teachers in the classroom that are very committed to this organization. They are the ones that have to overcome that at some level. Beyond that, we have to look at some of our startup programs. Are they delivering education on an equitable basis as traditional classrooms?
Thank you. Mr. Van Nerden.
Well, first of all, it's an extremely difficult issue with the dollars that we have. The obvious solution is more teachers. I think my kids were in classes of 300 and 400 when they were going to school here, so I'm not so sure that our school has grown that much in size, but I wonder if our teaching staff hasn't been reduced to the point that we have this type of a problem. Maybe we have to look at technology a little bit more and try to use technology more, get more technology in the classrooms. Maybe we can be more effective in working with fewer teachers working with more students. I certainly agree with teacher contact time being really critical. It's the most important issue we have, and I'm not sure how we solve that problem. But my best shot at this, without spending a lot of money to hire a lot of staff, is try to look at technology more.
Thank you. Mr. Sebring, I believe we are back to you to begin a question. And the question is, what are your thoughts regarding all-day, everyday kindergarten? Mr. Sebring.
I'm completely in favor of it.
Well, that was easy. Mr. Wall.
I really have nothing to add.
Thank you. Mr. Wall?
No attorney, including myself, is going to give up 2 minutes or but mostly I want to just emphasize what you get with me, I think, is a commitment to a process, regardless of what the issue is, whether it's all-day kindergarten or budget issues. I think you start with, let's gather all the information so we have the best information to make the best decision. Let's involve all the stakeholders, again, in this process so that they feel that they had a fair opportunity to address the question, become fully invested, and then they become the ones that can get out in front of the public and drive and help support the implementation and getting the job done, so to speak. And so, personally, I'd love to see all-day kindergarten. We also know that ties into spacing issues and and how do you pay for that? So one question raises about 15 others, but what I think you'll get with me is a commitment to the process that will get us to the best results at the end of the day.
Thank you. Mr. Van Nerden.
As I mentioned before, I'm for it. I think I have grandkids that are participating at this point. And so I think it's really critical. The space is an issue. Where do we put these kids? So if there's any way, as we look at our budget, any way we can squeeze in everyday kindergarten into our budgeting process, we're going to have to try to do it. We have to work very hard to get it into the budget. However we can do it, it's #1 issue for me.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I'm certainly supportive of it. The evidence, anything I've ever read, certainly supports that it's a very critical time within the educational development of students to catch them early, catch them and get them pushed a little bit more. Certainly there's going to be a lot of effort on how to find a creative solution to both fund it and where we're going to put these extra students. We don't have empty classrooms sitting all over our district, so there are, as KJ mentioned, several other questions that will lead from if we make that strategic decision if that's what we want to do. But certainly I'm supportive of it, and I think creatively, if we engage the community, we can probably find a solution and a way to make that happen.
Thank you. Mr. Bill Wall, we'll begin the next question with you, and this question was raised by more than one person in our audience. The version of the question we will ask is this: should the district ask the question of purchasing the Pillsbury property again? Mr. Wall.